those of you who got an invite, welcome to Nerd Prom.
No matter where in the world you are, we're all
absolute mongoloid.
International. With the hyphen. Nerds International proudly presents.
We want to take you on a quest for knowledge. One that will take us from ancient medieval fantasy across the far reaches of space to the distant future. To many savage worlds.
Welcome to episode 70 of the Wild Die Podcast. This is a podcast dedicated to pinnacle entertainment savage worlds, aimed at beginners like me and veterans like the one and only Eric Lamoureux. It's go time, it's showtime.
That's right. We've got a guest, someone I invited because today we're going to talk about VTTs. That's virtual tabletops for people who don't know. And there's this question that keeps coming up. What is the best VTT for Savage Worlds? And the main two are basically Fantasy Grounds and Roll20. So we don't know Roll20 all that well for Savage Worlds, so I figured, hey, let's invite Dustin. Dustin from the Savage Worlds GM podcast and also Atomic Ninja Studio. So welcome to the show, Dustin.
Why, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate being on here.
So the Savage Worlds GM podcast, people have often called it the inferior cousin to this show, or the... no, I'm just kidding. It's good to have you on here, Dustin. It's good to finally meet you.
He starts swinging.
I could just hear the other hosts just sharpening the knives. I'm going to be like, okay, guys, just put the weapons down.
I know, that is why I said it, because the other hosts on there, man, they can't take a joke. I just want to say, that was a joke. Okay, just to point that out.
We're going to send Eric over with the peace pipe now.
That will work, actually. Get that high-grade Colorado stuff, and we're doing all right.
The trouble is the peace pipe is what Eric calls his genitalia, so we're in trouble there. That will only make them more angry.
I'm already regretting doing this, inviting Dustin on the show.
Now you sound like my mother.
All right, so yeah, that's basically what the meat of the show is going to be about. But first, let's get to some feedback that we received from the previous episode.
So Owen Lean says, on the subject of retconning, the only time I've done it, and I stand by it, was undoing a time where I seriously messed up, by which I mean I unconditionally railroaded the players in an awful way. They came up with great plans and role-played well, but I enforced the way I thought the story should go because I felt it had to go that way. This is the only time I've acted that way as a GM before or since, and in the light of morning I realised how badly I'd screwed up, so I told the players as much and why I'd messed up. In doing so, I declared a retcon on that night and let the story go the way it would have gone if I hadn't GM whaled it. I think in that situation where the GM has seriously messed up to the point where it's damaged the game, then yes, retcon is acceptable. Otherwise, it isn't in most cases.
That sounds like some atrocious DM bombs were dropped there. I'd be curious to know how the story actually unfolded. In what way did he seriously railroad the story? All of a sudden, your players end up in some, unacceptable bar or den of sin or something along those lines, and you're playing with a bunch of people that just got out of church. I can see you might want to retcon that.
Yeah, I think as a GM, there are times where you goof up, you screw up. I will try to save the situation before retconning. Sometimes you can fix it, but yeah, it depends on the situation, and if the GM feels it's right to push the retcon button in that situation and the rest of the group is okay with it, I don't have a problem with it. I just try to fix it first before doing that.
Yeah, because the thing is, at the table, once a player's done something, I never ever allow them to rewind it. Do you know what I mean? So I don't think I should be allowed the same that freedom.
Good point.
I will say I'm glad that he's at least able to take a moment, step back, and see what happened. Just to take a minute to say, okay, I made a mistake, and I got to figure out a way to fix it. Yeah. Personally, I'm not in favor of the retcon, but being able to add another layer to what's happening at the time for an improv, I could definitely see that being the case. Being able to admit your mistakes and to be able to move forward and adjust, I kind of get the idea that just reading through, my thoughts are that he was in one of those narrative lines where a certain thing had to happen and he wouldn't let any other outcome occur. So at least he admitted it, but normally I would say instead of going back, you move forward with something else that changed what happened, It's
quite an adult thing to do, as you say, Dustin, to hold your hands up and say, you know what, I made a mistake. And I think that that's quite admirable, but it's not what a lot of nerds do. A lot of nerds tend to get their backs up and just go, Nyah!
That's what you do, huh?
Hey, it's what I do, because I'm a child.
Sound like a crow.
Exactly. Next bit of feedback comes in from Ronnie Walton, and he says, first of all, I enjoyed the show, as I usually do. I assume he's being sarcastic, but I'll get straight to the point. The purpose of what is an RPG and X-Card stuff is to inform the newcomers who have never played RPGs and are coming into it purely because they're a fan of the novels. So he's talking about there was a part in Powder Mage, I believe, that had a section informing people what an X card is and what is an RPG and things like this. Anyway, he continues, without that, those new folks wouldn't know what is considered common knowledge to the initiated. I guarantee there are many a reader of the novels who may have never played an RPG before but can't get enough Powder Mage, so they jump straight in without knowing anything other than, cool, I can be a Powder Mage. In short, that section is for them, not you. Also, in the novels, they snort a pinch of black powder and gain access to powers. I've read the first one. Also, it can be addictive, so you've got to use it sparingly. So you're pretty close to the mark. The novels, speaking only from having read the first, are quite well written. Just saying.
I'm just waiting for the timeline in the series to get to the 1970s to where you can have cocaine mages, because that's just the thinly veiled. It's like steampunk disco, man.
It is. It's cocaine, but the stuff is black.
Yeah, what happened to the pinnacle guidelines is to not glorifying drug use. That's what I want to know. Thank you for writing. I appreciate your feedback. And you're right. Every RPG needs a section about what is an RPG. The thing is, there's already one in Savage Worlds core book, and you need that book to play Powder Mage. So to me, it's just redundant. Instead, why not use those, about 9 pages to give stat blocks from the famous characters in the novels, more options for Powder Mage and a bestiary. That was my point, but you're right. RPG needs that for people that don't know what it is. I just don't think it had its place in a setting book. That's all.
So I'm writing a supplement at the moment called the XXX card, and it's for if something specifically sexy happens at a game and you want it to get more sexy, you play the XXX card.
Can we grease this up? Slide the card in.
Yeah.
I know what Ronnie's saying. Like I get the gist of his post. Like I understand it, but if we were to pick it apart, you really have to look at it from this perspective. I'm buying Powder Mage because I want to learn about Powder Mage, not because I want to learn about the X card. Right. X card is for events. If you're running a convention, X card should be front and center. If you're running an online convention, X card should be front and center. There's a time and place for it, and we just feel like it's not the front of. Because just imagine that they did that with every RPG book. Let's just go that route. Now every time I gotta buy an RPG book, Savage Worlds has a section on the X card. You buy 50 Fathoms has a section on the X card. Like it becomes a lot of wasted paper. There's a time and place for it, and not in the front of a book that I'm going to buy. Time and place is.
If it was a standardized thing and it was just a single page that could be cut and pasted and was public domain to be cut into every book, then that would be okay. But I think that considering, did you say it was 9 pages?
Yeah.
I mean, it does take the Michael a little bit, and they could have just released those 9 pages as like a little free article on their website or something like that, rather than putting it in this book. Like you say, it should have been used to flesh out this book.
Coming from a background in psychology, I have some opinions about the X card that do not endear me to the populace. The whole fact that you even need a card to hold up is just adding another layer when you should be able to just, in a group, hold up your hand and say, hey, I'm not comfortable. And I don't even think that's one of those issues that needs to be in a game. I'm just like looking at this thinking, like you said, Eric, that's something that gets covered in Savage Worlds Adventure Edition or Savage Worlds Deluxe where they talk about it. But I'm just like, I'm flabbergasted at the whole concept of it, because in psychology, one of the things that we work on is exposure to things that make us uncomfortable so that they don't completely overwhelm us, and just being able to hold up your hand and say, hey, I'm a little uncomfortable. Can we just tone it down? I think civilized people would go, yeah, okay.
Yeah. I think it's relatively the same concept. It's just a prop that helps you do it, I guess. I mean,
yeah.
For me, I do have to agree, because most people would do that anyway. I've been at games where that has been the case, where it's been like, yeah, do you mind? I mean, there was a time where that was me. I'm gonna be honest. Right? I did it, but it wasn't anything that bad. It was just that we were playing at a game where this guy's 18-year-old son was there, and the guy was like, "Whoa, do you mind?" I said the F word once, and he's like, "Whoa, do you mind? My son's here." And I'm like, "The guy's an adult. What are you talking about?" But anyway, that was all it was. But he was just like, "Can we tone down the language a little bit?" And I was like, "Yeah, fine." And that was it. But I mean, if it was something like genuinely traumatic, I guess it would be kind of different.
Here's what worries me, though. What worries me is with the whole introduction of an X card is that we're starting to turn this into a product. Like, this is something that you now buy to show people. Whereas something as free as your hand or just your own initiative is, I'm like, there is a certain layer of like merchandising that comes with the X card that really worries me.
I don't know. I can just grab a piece of paper and draw an X on it. I don't need to buy it.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, but I think you're onto something there, Dustin. I might start selling like really special ones.
Well, you already have the triple X card. I mean, there's a market for that.
Copyright.
If you guys have seen it, have you seen the coasters? They're like hit point tracking coasters. You can write notes and gaming notes on them.
So that the condensation on your glass is gonna smear everything. So that
what a great idea.
Right.
How many hit points do you have?
I just want to say, in putting a pin in the X card thing, because everybody's got an opinion of it. I think we all agree that there is a value to it. We can, we get that, but there's also a place, a time and place for it to be brought up. And I think that's like when you, like I said before, show up at a gaming convention, they should have a section saying, be appropriate.
Yeah, I used to have some very different opinions to I have now, and I spoke to you guys the other day, and you sort of enlightened me a little bit about this. And yeah, I completely agree. It's for when you don't know who you're gaming with. That's what it is. I mean, the thing about it is that you're. But I think I do have to agree that I don't think it belongs in a setting book. It may belong in a book for a game or a sort of game system, because then it's kind of giving you advice on how to run a game, right? But why is it in a setting? What is that? What has that got to do with Powder Mage?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my whole point. It just feels like someone with some type of agenda, or I don't know. Anyway, let's move on.
Those damn swidges. They're coming after us. They're gonna feed on our children. You swidges. Sorry, I'm gonna cut that out.
Damn. I need to tighten the leash on you guys.
Yep.
All right. Do you understand what I have to deal with now, Dustin?
Yes, I do. I do listen to this podcast. Seeing it raw, live, visceral. It's beauty. It's chaos.
Moist.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for the news. The news is incoming. Prepare yourself for the news. News! And some announcements about the Nerds International Network and the Wild Die podcast.
A little bit of news. So recently, the JumpStarts for Adventure Editions came out. It was, about 16 of them? Maybe 13
a lot of junk.
With some doubles. A lot of junk. Yeah, I think that bundle got updated 3 times already. And Dustin had his hand on one of them for Dead End. That looks pretty good, by the way. And I worked on the Wiseguys one, of course. So
it's actually
some good
the best
ones
one in there. No offense, Dustin, but the Wiseguys one is so good, man.
It is. It's really good. Not
presentation's amazing, and there's a federal agent in there called Gary Harrison.
Is there really?
Shut up, Gary. You already knew that.
Well, you guys talked about it in the chat channel, but I didn't realize it was really in the book. Yeah. I saw you say something about whatchamacallit in our private chat thing that we got going on, but I didn't realize that it was a real thing. You got to remember, when I'm at work, I'm like glancing at my phone occasionally, all the time, like 90% of the time, but not really paying attention. So.
Oh, good, yeah. We're in there. Me and you, we're combined into one sexy person. We're a special federal agent. Anyway,
so is he a Roger Moore with a Canadian accent, or is he like a fat Englishman?
No, the character I had in mind for that one was the one played by Gary Oldman in The Professional, Leon the Professional. So the dirty cop there.
That's going to be amazing. Yeah, but the JumpStarts, there's like, how many is there? Like 15 or something like that?
I think there's 20.
Yeah.
20? Yeah. Jesus. So these are all like mini type settings with a couple of like edges or new rules and mini settings that you can use, and often they'll have like an adventure in there and stuff. It's really cool actually. But as I say, a lot of junk, but a lot of good stuff as well. So yeah, it's sort of 50-50 I'd say. But yeah, really cool.
Yeah, check it out if you haven't yet. I don't think some of them have been released for non-backers, so you can find those on DrivethruRpg or under the swag Savage Worlds Adventurers Guild, which leads me to the Morphtranserbots that came out recently. That if you're a big fan of Sean Bircher, he works on the Savage Riffs line. He made kind of a framework for Transformer, basically. So if you want to add Transformers to your campaign or make a whole campaign around that, you've got all the rules for that only for $1. So good deal.
Amazing.
Yeah, I thought that was like sex robots.
Can be. I mean, the thing is, Transformers is all about electronics transforming into robots, right? Who's to say that?
Vehicles,
Who's to say that your mum's back massage is not going to transform
into a gun?
Pew, pew. Into a gun, yeah.
Or a laser sword. That's even more fun.
Yuck.
More. So Harrison, you guys are back with another Savage Con, right? What is that, and when is it?
Oh my god, I'm so excited, guys. So yeah, last year I ran the highly successful Savage Con UK, and this was in my hometown of Red Hill, and this is very near London and also very near a train station, so that is amazing. And this is in the UK, obviously. And this year we're doing it again, and this is going to be in April. This is April the 13th and 14th in Red Hill, UK. And you can come to this. It is going to be on the Saturday the 13th at the Toby Carvery and on the 14th at the Junction. It is £10 a ticket, and obviously there's accommodation there. They're both locations are literally 1 minute from the train station, so it's going to be amazing. We're going to have loads of people. It's all gaming all day. With the £10 you get entry into a raffle where you can win loads of cool Savage Worlds stuff and probably some other RPG stuff too, and it is going to be a hell of a time. Last year we had some amazing games, amazing people turn up, and this year it's going to be no exception, so come along. SavageCon UK 13th and 14th of April. I'm organising it with a mate of mine who wants to remain anonymous, but it's going to be incredible.
You're going to grapple this guy too, right?
Yes, I am actually running. I am actually running Frozen Skies at this event. We are one of the prizes, the first confirmed prize for the raffle, and we're going to get loads more, is a copy of Frozen Skies. And that's I've also been sent a PDF to read myself, and I am going to be running Frozen Skies, and I'm going to make it the best damn Frozen Skies game there ever was, man. And my adventure, of course, is going to be titled Grapple the Skies. It's going to be amazing.
You need to mic everybody up and record that. That's what you need to do.
I will try. It gets really loud in there, but yeah, I'm gonna do it. There's going to be props. There's going to be planes. It's going to be the best game ever. I'm of course going to run Solomon Kane as well. But moving on, Interface Zero 3.0 came out on Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Cyberpunk game. And you know what this means, ladies and gentlemen. Copies of 2.0 are going to be going real cheap. Yeah.
That's right. I mean, it's the season of the Kickstarters for Savage Worlds now. Get ready for it. It's going to happen. Now that Adventure Edition is out, a lot of publishers can now go ahead with their settings. So Interface Zero, yeah, cyberpunk, dystopian future type of setting. I like the setting a lot. 2.0 was a bit heavy on the rules there, but David Jarvis promises that it's going to be a lot leaner and more streamlined for 3.0. He's already shared some previews for that. That looks great. Good deals too. I think I pledged for the $25 level. I get 2 books, 1 starting adventure, and all the stretch goals, and I get vouchers for print on demand. So for like over 300 pages of material, 3 plot point campaigns in there. I mean, that's a pretty good deal. So check it out. So,
yeah, I thought you didn't like Interface Zero. I thought you said that you tried to run it once and then somebody went to let down a tyre and then they said their tyres had self-inflating tyres, and then the car drove away and then you got annoyed.
Yeah, I mean, it's all the gear porn, and apparently there's going to be a lot less gear porn in there. Instead, they're going to use trappings for the gears, depending on the corporation. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's a well put together setting. I'm not the best GM for cyberpunk or dystopian future settings, but and also Gunmetal Games make amazing looking books, so the production value is insane. So that's why I supported it.
I just feel like Eric somebody said, "Oh, the tire self-inflate," and that was Eric's equivalent of Matt Stark's X card. He just looked at the book and threw it on the shelf. Never playing this again.
So
basically,
Eric, seeing as you're getting a 3.0, so you got your 2.0 for sale. I mean, this should be like a conversation we have on air, but how much you want? How much we talking?
You don't like PDFs.
What? Ah, that. Ah, I swore. I was doing so well as well.
So we're gonna move on with the rest of the show. First, a quick jaunt there with the plug. We've been talking about the chases quite a bit. So recently in my Rippers campaign, I ran a chase, but using the quick encounters instead. So we're going to cover that shortly, and then move on to we're going to open up the books and talk about the VTTs. So let's go to the plug.
Hey, it's the podcast log.
All right, so the quick encounters, what are they? Well, they started out as quick combats. A couple years ago, Shane came out with this quick combat rules because he was going to conventions in Europe, especially in Italy, where when you run a convention game, it's usually for an hour. So it's pretty difficult to get a decent session going in 1 hour. That's usually the length of maybe one combat and a little bit of exposition. So he came up with this rule where you just roll one skill and then narrate what happens according to that. You can get wounds from it, that type of thing. But in Adventure Edition, they expanded it to quick encounters so that you can use them for more than just combat. You could use them for, like I said, for a chase, for a crisis, for a heist, for some type of mission. Maybe you're sending your followers or your allies to perform some type of mission, and you don't want to spend an hour or two rolling dice for that. You just roll one die and then go ahead. It could be a trek as well. So that's it came up in our Rippers game where they had just unleashed a horn god demon in a basement, and that demon wanted to escape and wreak havoc into the city. So they ran after the demon. I said dragon. Demon. And instead of running a chase, I just asked the two guys that were actually chasing after that demon how they were planning on stopping them. Were they going to try to use their shooting? One of them is a sharpshooter. Excuse me. So he decided to use shooting. Matt's a melee guy, so he used fighting instead. And then they rolled the dice. They both rolled high. So we just narrated it together, like the shooter shut off part of the wall that fell down. The demon tripped over it, and Matt jumped on the demon using his Ripper claws and just finished the guy. That took about 2 minutes instead of an hour and a half of running a chase. And it worked for what we wanted it to do at this point, for what I wanted it to do, because you use quick encounters when you don't have the time or when you feel that it's not all that important to the story, and you just want to get it done. You could use it for waves of enemies in a combat on a battlefield if you wanted to. And it's funny because Gary's been saying that the chase in Savage Worlds take way too much time, and he preaches his ICRPG that would have gotten it done in a couple minutes,
which is true.
And I brought up the quick encounters that can do exactly the same thing. What I would say about the quick encounters, especially in this situation, is that yes, it's a lot more simpler, faster, but it also created a lot less memories that we're going to talk about for years to come. It's like you could run a combat using quick encounter, but you're probably not going to have as much fun as if you run an actual real combat. So what do you think, Gary? I mean, you mentioned at the beginning of the show that it was boring that way. What do you think?
Well, I was just being a jerk, to tell you the truth, but I do kind of stick by what I mean or what I said. The premise was like we have spent so much time on chases trying to get this nailed down because it is such a big thing inside of Savage Worlds with the chases being so abstract that we've spent a lot of time doing it. And when you get inside these things and they end up taking a solid 30 plus minutes, you have a tendency to be able to remember the events that happened inside that 30 minutes to an hour, as opposed to something that would happen in a quick encounter where everybody sits around for a few minutes, says, I'm going to go do this, to say, I'll be the disable the security guy. Here's my hacking role, kind of a thing. And it's over and done within, like, quickly. It's like my wife. She doesn't like quick encounters. She likes it when it's the hour-long sessions.
Dramatic task.
Yeah, right? I flip over 5 cards on her forehead.
Dustin, have you tried the quick encounters?
Yeah, I have actually. I tried to run them. It was a Drakkenheim game, and my players were down in the sewers, and there were like goblins coming at them. So I'm sitting here thinking, okay, I have 30 goblins. I've got to move through this as fast as I can. And it really does work when you're dealing with like waves upon waves. But I gotta say, guys, like when it comes down to like chases and such as that, I'm surprised we're not using like the mass battle rules more often and just focusing on a specific skill.
I agree.
Yeah, like
Foxy time during my wife is like this quick encounter. I went down into the sewers. There were some goblins there. I rolled some dice.
Or even
it's done. Yeah.
I've done chases using dramatic tasks before, and they work perfectly fine. I mean, you then get this cool scene, and it's or whatever. Even the quick encounters, as far as they work, get this quick dramatic chase out of the way. And I've done chases, as I say, using dramatic tasks, and they're always fun. It gives people a chance to do their action that they want to do. As they work currently, I don't think I think the chases I find them abhorrent.
I really feel like, going off what you said, I have a hard time running them, Harrison. Like, I don't have anything against the designers or what they're trying to do. I'm just like, I find that we have our mechanics that would do a different thing actually works better at this thing,
To me, I feel like the current chases, and the reason why I would stick to either quick encounters. As for mass battles, you'll have to tell me how that works in a second. But I would stick to quick encounters or the dramatic task thing for a reason. And it's because I feel like the chases, the way they work at the moment, don't feel like Savage Worlds. The way it's abstracted and the way the kind of 2 actions type thing. To me, it doesn't. The chases feel a bit hamstringy and don't have the freedom that I associate with Savage Worlds.
It really feels like there's another game being played. Like it turns into a miniatures game at that point,
So, Dustin, how would you run a chase using the mass battle rules?
Okay, so mass battle rules, going back to the whole thing, when a mass battle is set up, you have somebody that's the lead, and they would have to normally roll knowledge mass battle. And they get a set of tokens, and then the opposition, they would have to roll off of their mass battle, and they get a set of tokens. Now, whoever's the lead is the one that's actually like organizing and running the troops. But the other players, they get dealt in, and they get the option of either doing something and risking damage or not doing anything and risking damage. It's exactly like with a car. It's just your armies are in the cars. And instead of rolling knowledge battle, you're rolling your driving skill. So the driver is effectively the general. And let's say he's in, just what's a good car? Well, let's say we're in Wiseguys. What's a good car that the mobsters drive?
Dodge Viper.
Dodge Viper. Okay. So, all right. So here's the thing. The old crowd of mobsters are in the Cadillac, and the young crowd of mobsters are chasing them in the Viper. So the old crowd is going to get 5 tokens because Cadillacs, they're built for style and they're definitely durable, but the Viper's a lot faster. So the Viper is going to get 10 tokens. So the driver, when he rolls in the Cadillac, he's got to keep those 5 tokens as they whittle away. And the driver in the Viper has 10, and they're just opposing each time. Now, the old guys in the Cadillac, they're not just going to sit there and take it. They're going to hang out the window and they're going to shoot. And, they're a little bit loopy from all those like diabetic medicines. So they're going to have to hold on. So when those turns are made, they're going to knock up against stuff and take bumps and bruises. Well, the same thing, like the hot shot in the Viper, he's taking these cool drifts and he's moving side to side. So unless they sit there, they're going to take damage too. So as it goes per turn, you either say, I'm just going to hold on and not take damage, or you say, I'm going to like hang out the window and shoot and risk getting knocked around. And the driver, he's having to, because he drives, he doesn't take the -2 for it being unskilled. And let's say he has ace, that sort of balances it out. Now you get to a club, you've got an even greater negative. So now you're like, oh no, old lady's walking out in the street, not paying attention. You got to swerve around her. The other guy in the Viper, he's going so fast he doesn't see her. Well, there you go. Ethel's up flying in the air, and he just lost a couple of his tokens. So mass battle works great for chases. You can even take the tokens and you can look at it as increments of how close people are or how far they're getting away. The chase rules, how they were just before these, kind of felt a lot like the mass battle in that aspect.
Yeah, because when I'm hearing you describe it, it kind of sounds like that, but it's, I guess, a tiny bit simpler.
Yeah.
So as soon as someone one side runs out of tokens, they're basically out of the chase. They lost the chase. Is that it?
If they lose all their tokens and the other side has it, then like let's say that Sal in the Cadillac, he's driving a slower car, but he's good at what he does. So since he's not going as fast or his car's heavier, he can take a turn. He'll start keeping his tokens, and the other guy, he's so reckless, like say Vinny in the Viper, he's going to start whittling his down. Well, eventually he's going to crit fail. He's going to run out of all of his tokens, and he's going to crash, and he's not going to be able to chase the guy. So Sal, getting ahead at this point, he manages to get away because he's got his tokens. The other guy lost his. He won the battle, so he gets away.
Yeah, I like it. The only kind of chase that I would see this being really difficult would be a foot chase, because then everybody gets their own. They act on their own card. So to have like 7-8 people each with their tokens and all that I think that could get a bit weird. But for vehicles, yeah, I agree.
I guess foot chase, then you would run as a quick encounter, but then this is good for vehicles.
Yeah. Look over the mass battle rules, guys. See how it works for vehicles. It works great.
That is actually a very, very good idea. I like it.
Yeah, and then you just narrate losing tokens, as someone hitting the side wall there, or...
No, I don't think you were listening, Eric. 100% of the time, it's when you hit an old woman in the street.
Well, and it's always the same old woman. It's always Ethel the Ironheart, because she just doesn't care that cars are coming at her.
She's got bones of steel, man.
Right.
Yeah, that sounds like Gary on his day a day at work for Gary.
He's always looking at his phone, crashing into old women.
If I did, I would never know. You wouldn't even feel him in my truck. That said, I do want to say that, Eric, you have absolutely nailed the chase rules. The chase that we did when we were doing the Wiseguys deal with Uncle Jay, and I got pushed out of the car, and then you narrated that they were, we're through the city and whatnot, and they come around through, and I had to go through the pharmacy. That's fantastic, because you implemented the vehicle, the complications. I think Harrison was there too.
No, I wasn't, sadly. I played the Rippers one. And I should say, like, it's not a criticism against any of the people that have run chases for me. I think they've done a good job. I just don't think that particular part of the Suede rules is for me. Other than that, I do like them. I just don't think that particular part is for me. I think the people that run them have done a great job, and sticking to the rules and knowing them and all of this stuff. It's really good how they've done it. It's just that when I play them, I'm just like, okay, this is still fun. Like, I'm enjoying it and I'm having fun. It's just that particular part of it isn't for me. When I sort of go on about how much I dislike it, it's not that I completely hate it. I'll still play it and enjoy it. I didn't like the old chase rules, but when I played them, I still had fun with my friends. I'm still playing a game, and the sort of narrative that happens is still a good laugh. But it's not my cup of tea, and I wouldn't necessarily put it in a game that I run. That's all it is.
Sweet. So yeah, if you haven't or are not familiar with chases, stick with it, because Eric nails it out of the park every time. It's super fun. I just feel like he's got it down pat. And when we play with him, there's the least amount of time is taken up with the rules because Eric knows them, and because he knows the rules for the chase so well. When weird things happen, like I get kicked out of the car, it's easy for him to implement that we're in town. There's a pharmacy that I can run through and catch up with the guys as they come around the block. Things like that just make it a little speedy and fun to play. I think that was my favorite chase. And here I am telling you about a memory that I had in a game with you, as opposed to the quick encounters where you're just rolling a dice, making a simple thing. And I will say too that I do use quick encounters, but not for chase scenes. Like if there was a bank heist or something going on behind the scenes, like for example, in my 50 Fathoms campaign, anytime they plan a battle to take over a city or something like that, or there's one adventure in there where they have to go get Amemnis' son. I can't remember what his name is, but that can be, they attack a city in their boat. And so, it's cannon fire from the shore and sending in your guys at night and coming in the back and all that kind of stuff. So I did, big encounters like that for sure, man. Quick encounters are the way to go. And that, because it's so huge, can be a memorable, large encounter. But that's what we were talking about this morning.
Yeah, I mean, it depends how much narration you put into it, too. I mean, you can't just roll a couple dice and move on. You have to actually fluff it up a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I'll stick to what I said about the chase rules so far. I mean, they are mobile combats. If you don't want to run a mobile combat at this point in your session, don't use them.
There are other ways of doing mobile combats as well, because there's the mounted combat rules, and there's often times where you'll have vehicles that have roughly the same speed. And there was a rule that I included just for sake of ease, right? Because a lot of people didn't like chase rules and things like this, or people just want to keep things simple. In an adventure that I adapted years and years and years ago, wasn't that long ago actually, called Dusk, which I can re-share to anyone that wants it. And at the end of that, it was kind of simple. There's a chase that occurs on two wagons. One of them's being controlled telepathically by a vampire, and the other one's being driven by the PCs. Now the driver, he can, with a successful driving roll, can move the car 2 spaces, either backwards or sideways, or 1 space forward, and then he can double any of those amounts with a raise. Simple. And so can the vampire, except he can kind of do that as a free action on his turn because he's controlling it telepathically. Now, anyone who's on the wagons can just act on their turn, and everyone does everything on their initiative card. That's it, simple. So you just run it like a normal combat, except the vehicles move when it's the driver's initiative. And that's it.
So you're basically using the change position maneuver from the chase.
Exactly, but it was long before that actually came out. And so yeah. it was literally that. And the thing is, you could do that. And if you wanted to do a ram, you didn't need a rule for that. That was in it ages ago. You just do a fighting attack, but you trap it as while you're driving. It was that simple. And the thing is, all of that was in that little adventure. And you just run it like a normal combat, but you just do it. There are people driving inside of the combat.
Yeah, I mean, I think you need to read the chase rules again, because that's basically what you just described, the chase rules.
It isn't, though, because you've got all there's these maneuvers, right? They're kind of silly because you've got there's these hard and fast maneuvers that you kind of have to stick to.
That you would do? No, you don't have to stick to them. They just explain to you how to do a ram maneuver or how to force someone off the road.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Here's the thing that I didn't like within the chase rules. It's like every time you get it out, I feel like part of the reason it takes longer is because of that. It's because it's a different set of rules, and you don't need it. You're always saying stick to core, and in Deluxe, you could do all of the stuff that these chase rules did without it. That is my point. Now, they've added all these new maneuvers in there. What did they do? They did things that the game already did.
Yeah, they just make it a convention for everybody around the table.
Yeah, and now you've got this thing. It's like, okay, you can do it as, well, I forget what it's called, but it's the standard action or the main action during things.
Yeah, if you do it free, you just roll normal, and if you spend your full action doing it, you get a +2.
Which is like sort of different to how the whole game works, so it's like a different set of the way using actions normally works.
It's like they took the aim maneuver and just condensed it down, to add that +2. There has been some issue with the whole, you can take up to 3 of these, or you can just condense them into the +2. It used to be that if the aim maneuver in Deluxe was that you would hold your action for the whole round and you get a +2. And I kind of get the idea that they gave like multiple actions just so you could get that same effect with everything now. And
for the chase, yeah. It's a crunchy combat. It is a very crunchy combat. That's
but I think that's what Harrison's saying is like Savage Worlds isn't built around crunch. It's built around sort of abstract.
And we had that in Deluxe and people hated it, so I don't know. I knew it when they would come up with the new chase rules that there'd still be people hating it, so it's a very controversial it's a controversial rule.
But that's my point. Like I knew the thing is that it doesn't mean that they are immune from criticism. The thing is, it's not like, oh, they've done it one way and it was naff, now they've done it another way, so you can't complain anymore. No, it's just they've done it 2 bad ways. That's my opinion. They did it one really cool way that I actually liked, and now that's gone. That's the trouble. It's just that the token one, I really liked, and now they stopped it, because that actually felt like Savage Worlds still, and now they've done this new thing with the maneuvers and things like this. It to me, it's like, it doesn't feel like Savage Worlds. It doesn't play like the core game plays. It plays like a different system within the game for doing chases, and that's not how the rest of the game works, and that's
Eric,
why I don't like it.
Eric probably has those rules, and you could get your hands on them, and then you could just play your chases that way.
I still have them.
Oh, cool. Well,
I mean that's what I said last episode too. That I quite enjoyed the token ones too. So
they were cool. And as Gary says, like, I've still got them, and I kept them for that very reason, because I'm gonna just use those, and I do like them.
If you were playing Sean Bircher's Transmorphobots, and you were doing a chase scene as you were running, and you decided to transform into a car. Now, are you doing automobile chase scene and then you transform back into a robot?
Yeah.
And you're doing a foot chase?
Yep. You probably spent the last half hour coming up with this, huh?
Didn't take me that long. Give me some credit, jerk.
So that entire last sentence was all just to necessitate a sound effect.
Pretty much.
Anyway, the truth is, how you would rule that, Gary, is what would happen is everyone would look at the rule book for 10 minutes every time that you would change.
They came up with the cheat sheet now. It's all on one sheet of paper.
I saw that. Yeah, everyone was after one of those, and now they did it. So that's cool.
Yeah, they messed it up at the release. It was the wrong complications, but now it's fixed apparently.
All right. Well, now that you guys have stomped on all my hard work, let's move on to the VTT section. Jerks.
Yep. Let's open up the books.
Now, little Jimmy, you know what time it is?
Is it really?
Why, yes. It is that time indeed. It's time to open up the books.
Yes.
So, go over to Grandpa's bookshelf and go and pick any book you like. And then we'll open it up and we'll have a good look inside.
What about this one?
No, not that one. No, that's Grandpa's special book for his alone time.
Oh, okay, what about this one?
No, not that one either. That's, no, you know what, in fact, bugger off. Go away. No, I don't want to do this anymore.
Oh.
Open up the books.
So this is the real reason we got Dustin on, and it only took us like 4 hours to get here.
That's cool. We can edit out like 30 minutes of the from the my whole Transformers question in the bin.
No, that's staying in there. That was gold. But anyway, the point is VTTs and Savage Worlds. Everyone knows Roll20's better. Discuss.
No, I mean, one of our listeners wrote to us in Polish Ogre. Thank you. He says, "Hey guys, I'm going to start running games online, and I wanted to know what you think is the best virtual tabletop for Savage Worlds. What have you tried, and what did you like or not like about it? Also, do you have any advice for running online games versus face-to-face games?" So yeah, I mean, Gary and I are basically Fantasy Grounds guys. Harrison hasn't run Savage Worlds on any virtual tabletop, so he's going to be asking questions too, like me. And yeah, Dustin knows Roll20 quite well, which are the main two. There are others. I mean, there's Map Tool, there's Tabletop Simulator. I mean, there are many, but I consider Roll20 and Fantasy Grounds the main two for virtual tabletop. So yeah, let's start with Dustin. So why do you think Roll20 is good for you to run Savage Worlds?
Well, I guess we're going to get down to it. I really enjoy the fact that it's more of a toolbox. And it's got all the stuff that I need in terms of tools. It takes a little bit longer to set up. I'm not going to lie. It really does take some time to like set up your maps and set up your tokens. But there's a lot of customization in there. And also it's pretty intuitive for a guy like me. I made an outline here. And so when I run, one of the things that I like, I can have everything that I want my players to see. I can have that on their token level. I got a map level that's just whatever art I want to put up. But then I also get my GM level so that everything is sort of ghosted out. And if I need it there on hand, or if I want to go ahead and set it up in turn order, it's already there and I can just bring it up to the token level. I like the fact that I can add the cards that I want, and by selecting whichever tokens I want, I can just automatically put them into turn order. I really like the fact that not only is there like a huge marketplace to where I can buy maps and art, but also there's the fact that I like to do photo manipulation. So I can go break out GIMP and I can cut out the backgrounds and I can have literal full figure characters that I throw in there. Once you've gone through the process of building up your room and building up your macros or selecting your sheets, then you've got so much versatility that you can roll with. And I really like it. I'm going to go ahead and tell you one of the big complaints everybody gives me about Roll20 is like when they first log in, there's not enough real estate. The first thing you got to do is go to My Settings and choose Player Avatar and go to just names, and then go to Video and Voice and choose None, just no video and voice. And you'll get your real estate back.
Okay, so out of the box, you're talking about setting up your room. So what you're saying is that there's no framework out of the box for Savage Worlds. You have to go and get what someone else has built for it, or build your own stuff to be able to run Savage Worlds. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. And you can get it the way you want it.
All right, fair enough.
Is that difficult to do, would you say?
Well, there's a little bit of a learning curve, but once you actually learn where all the pieces go, it's super easy. Like, I've got my Savage Shot room set up. If you guys want to, I'll show it to you later. It is easy as pie once you figure out how to do it. I think the problem is there's so much you can do. It just overwhelms people.
Okay, what about when there's an update? Will that mess up what you did, and then you have to sort of update your own framework to work with, like software upgrade or something like that?
I haven't had that problem. The biggest problem that I've had, in all honesty, has been that when we went from Deluxe to Adventure Edition, I used the tab sheet, which I think Rick Fender is the guy that came up. He's just created these great like tabbed sheets that you can use. But those sheets are still running on Deluxe. They haven't been updated to Adventure Edition yet. But you actually have the option of adding in different skills and adjusting. So the only problem I've really had is I've had to go in and add the athletics and thievery and stealth and common knowledge skills. But I haven't had any problems, no.
And that character sheet that you're talking about, that's like a community content, right? It's not one of the devs. Okay. Yeah. So that if that guy, and with all the updates, his sheet hasn't needed any more work. No.
He's been working on it, and anytime they do an update, he's pretty quick to get it sorted out, but it works just fine. I haven't had any trouble with it.
All right, and that's the consensus. That's like most people that play Savage Worlds on Roll20 use that guy's sheet.
Yeah. You don't even have to, though. Like, you can actually just do macros. Like, there's a dice roller in, like, the tools list that everybody has access to. There's a ruler, a literal ruler for the top. And if you don't like that, you just hit /R space and you put the number of dice. I mean, the Roll20 has a cheat sheet for how to actually use. It's like the welcome to Roll20 when it first appears. I love Roll20, guys. It's got everything that I need. It's got pretty good access to it. You know?
All right. Yeah, no, sounds good. So now Gary, which one's your favorite? Because I know you use two of them. Which one's your favorite, or pros and cons of each, maybe, if you want to cover both?
Dustin, do you play on Fantasy Grounds at all?
I have played on Fantasy Grounds. I've been in a couple of games that have been run by David Scott.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, he uses it. Yeah, for sure. So I was looking at how many hours you've invested inside of Roll20, 2,476 to be specific, which is a lot more than the 300 hours that I've put into it. But I will tell you that my 300 hours were put into this game by creating a player's handbook. I literally took every page of the player's handbook, ran it through GIMP, cut out the sections I wanted, added them as notes to my book, and I assembled my own player's handbook inside the game. Mm-hmm. And then I found Fantasy Grounds, and I realized that the 300 hours that I spent doing that, I could have just spent the $40 and bought the entire book in its done process, which is when, like, I'm trying to stick to the premise of the question, because I feel like if I stick to his question, which is what does you think is the best for Savage Worlds, it's going to stop me from spewing hate Roll20 because I really hated Roll20 after I did that, and then all of a sudden I found out Fantasy Grounds had it already built in. Savage Worlds are the difference between the two of them. Okay, inside of Fantasy Grounds, you're kind of stuck with the character sheet that you get. It's a nice character sheet. The benefit of it is that you can drag and drop everything. So let's say you want to play my favorite, 50 Fathoms. You guys thought I was going to stop talking about it. Here I am. You can buy the 50 Fathoms book for $10. The adventures are in it. It tells you how to run them. Sometimes you get maps with it already built. But here's the nice part. If you build your character sheet, you can just look at what a Grail does, which is one of the walrus-like men inside of Fantasy Grounds. And you can just drag that into your character sheet and you're done. Click. It gives you all the bonuses and the edges and the hindrances of a Grail. You can all the macros, you don't have to do macros. Macros aren't a thing because they're sort of built in. You can do macros, but they're built in. So if you drag the flintlock gun from the 50 Fathoms manual into your character sheet under the weapons, it's there. It associates it automatically with your shooting skill. So when you roll to shoot your flintlock gun, it looks at what your shooting skill already is, rolls that dice, it auto aces the dice, and then you can apply damage. Now, here's the beautiful part about Fantasy Grounds. You can do this if you have your 2 tokens on a map. You know, let's say you're on a desert beach and you, two tokens are at one end. You're at one end, and a Velociraptor is at the other. Or a yellowback, the Razorbacks, I think they're called. But you can take your gun shooting skill and you can drop that dice right on the token, and it will auto-calculate all of the damage for the DM and tell you how much damage you've done, how many wounds, and then you can press another button to soak Like all the automation is already all done. You don't have to do it.
That's if you learn how to do it. If you don't know how to do it, it will take you about 10 minutes to make one roll.
We've already established that there is a learning curve to also Roll20. So even though if there's one to Fantasy Grounds, there's also one to Roll20. So if you could probably negate the two of them and just say that both have a learning curve, so that it's not a positive or negative against either one. Inside Fantasy Grounds, that is a huge perk, man, having the stuff built in. Also, it's not online, so you're not using a server, which is another nice part about it. Character imports, NPC Maker for Savage Worlds, you can, from any PDF, grab the text block of a monster and press one button and import that monster into your game, and you're good, which is pretty nice.
That is amazing.
One thing we should mention is that I don't know if it matters to people, but Savage Worlds is what's the word I'm looking for? On Fantasy Grounds, it's the official VTT for Savage Worlds on Fantasy Grounds. So that's why they're allowed to have all this material pre-made in the store on Fantasy Grounds, which Roll20 doesn't have. So you're gonna get adventure modules already made for you. I think if you're a GM that likes to run pre-made modules, Fantasy Grounds is gonna save you a lot of prep time. But if you're gonna run homebrew stuff, you don't really need all that stuff. Plus, you're going to end up spending time importing your homebrew stuff into Fantasy Grounds anyway, which you would do on Roll20. So it depends.
So a while ago, answer me this, Gary. I don't know if this is true or not, but a while ago I ran a whole campaign on Roll20, and I quite liked it had like a kind of map maker built in, because you could use a lot of the tokens and things like this to make your maps, and that's what I did at the time, which I found really, really handy. Can you do that in Fantasy Grounds at all?
No, what you would do is you would just fire up GIMP, and you would take those tokens have talking about. The answer is yes.
Actually, yes, you can. You just use tokens. You put your map tiles into tokens, and then you put them on your image layer in Fantasy Grounds.
You have to import images from elsewhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you put them in your folder. That's all.
I get you.
I think
what I mean is that in Roll20 it had a lot of like these assets, and you could build stuff all from within Roll20 without ever importing a single thing.
You're still importing them. You're buying those assets and importing them. So you would buy like a dungeon tile token pack.
In Roll20, I did the whole campaign for free and used.
They have like free sections, yeah.
Yeah, and there's a hell of a lot too. That's it. But you can build maps in Fantasy Grounds, but it has to be all imported stuff. Is that what you're saying?
Well, that takes 1 second. Control-C, Control-V. I don't know. I don't see that being a big problem.
It's not that big a problem. The only thing is that what I'm saying is in Roll20 they had so many free things. It saved me a lot of time. That's all.
Yeah, but they're the same things that you can find online anyway, right?
Yeah, but then you'd have to find them online, then Control-C, Control-V. Whereas in Roll20 it was just like, boom, it's right there already.
Yeah.
You can actually search for them on the. You can go to the art section. Like if you go to the art folder or the art file and do a search, like if I type in grassland, not only does it search through my assets, but it'll also search the internet. Then yeah, like we have an entire section from the web, and there's like all kinds of dungeon.
And that's all free?
Yeah, man.
Same thing happened last night. I was running a game on Roll20. Needed a raptor, and I just typed in raptor. It was there, boom, straight on. It was in the library built into the game, so it's quite kind of handy to have it right there. Didn't have to pay for anything like that. It does save a little bit of time, and as you mentioned, Eric, it's not that much time, but when you're doing like a big project or you're building a big old map or a dungeon, all that time does add up.
So you mean on the fly, like it would be easier on the fly?
Yeah, exactly.
Let's refrain that and stick to it's free, so you can build up to 100 megabits of a big old map.
Well,
for the free version, but they have different layers. Like like when you get into Plus, then oh my gosh, you're talking about like a huge amount. Like there are 3 layers to it. You have the free, the Plus, and the Pro. And I roll with the Plus because I don't really need the Pro. But you can actually delete things out. And like Harrison's talking about, when you do the search, the stuff that you search for, once you delete it, it's gone out of that. You're good to go again.
All right, so Gary's talking about the storage part. So in Roll20, what for each tier, what's the limit of storage for your assets on there?
All right, let me bring up the page so I don't tell you wrong.
It's 100 megabytes. The one that Dustin has is 1,000 megabytes, and then the Pro is 2,000 megabytes of space. So there is a lot of storage, but it's also free is 100 megabytes. $3.99 is 1,000 megabytes. That's $3.99 per month forever, or $9.99 for 2,000 megabytes per month forever. And
okay, let's compare that to Fantasy Grounds.
One-time fee, you're done. As much storage as you want. You can save the creations as separate modules and export them, which is what I've done. This is the second time round that I've played my Fantasy Grounds campaign. I just simply went back, initiated my original module that I built inside of Fantasy Grounds, and I took that with me. Here's one thing that I use Fantasy Grounds for that isn't online. I also run it on my laptop, plug my laptop into a TV, and use my 50-inch TV as a battle map. So I have it has multiple purposes, not only online, but I can use Fantasy Grounds at my store without the internet. So that's a handy feature. For as soon as you stop paying for Roll20, your service goes down to 100 megabits.
What is the fee for Fantasy Grounds?
A one-time fee of, if you get it on sale through Steam, it's $115. And that's only if you're the Dungeon Master. There is a $40 one. They also have matching payments for monthly. You get a monthly subscription for the same price as you can whatchamacallit, if you don't want to pay the one-time fee. If you want to pay the one-time fee as a player, it's $40. And let's say you have 4 players, all 4 players need to have the $40 minimum one to come and play. If you pay as a Dungeon Master the Ultimate license, which is $115, then it's a one-shot fee for $115, and it's a lifetime.
On sale.
A regular $150. Just buy it on Steam sale for $120. You save yourself $30-$40.
When you have that one, the players don't have to pay anything. But if you get the $40 one, then everybody needs that license to be able to join and play with you.
So but I've been playing with the free one, the demo for ages.
You can't compare the two. That's not fair. You are so limited in what you can do with the free one compared to what Fantasy Grounds can do that they're not comparable.
Shut up. I'm talking about the free Fantasy Grounds, Gary. I've been playing with the free demo. So what's the 40 quid one?
Okay. So the demo that you play with, the only reason you use that is because the people you play with have already paid for the Ultimate. Me and Eric, Ultimate. So if we have the Ultimate, nobody else has to pay for it. As me as a Dungeon Master, I can invite anybody to come and play, and they only need the free demo. Because it all picks up. Not only that, when they're in the game, they have access to anything that I allow them access to. So they would have access to all the 50 Fathoms material and all of that stuff already built in. If I'm playing with a new player that doesn't know what the bolt spell is, they can click on the bolt spell and it'll read them the description. A window will pop up and tell them that, which is something that you would have to put into Fantasy Ground or into Roll20.
Seems like Roll20 is a lot better. I mean, the thing is, you get it for free, man.
Yeah, and if you're running a con game, like, I don't know if you guys have heard of AetherCon. They're a completely online con game. They use Roll20 because you don't have to buy into Fantasy Grounds. You'll have people... I know, man. You'll have people that'll show up for these online games, and then they'll just do one session, and then they'll not play again. You'll go through this rotation of people that either are or aren't playing, and having a one where the players can sit down for free, it kind of helps in that aspect. I mean, I don't know. Like, if you were going to run a con game, if you were going to run an online con, which one would you choose?
I would choose Fantasy Grounds. Nobody has to pay.
For every FG Con, because I used to be an organizer, at every FG Con, all the licenses are upgraded to the ultimate license, which means that every player can join for free. They get about 80 to 100 sessions per con. It's a pretty popular con, but I think one thing that we forget to talk about is the stupid port forwarding and connection issues. The difference is that with Roll20, it's a web-based application. So anybody can just join by clicking on a link, a URL. You can even use your phone if you wanted to, or your iPad, whatever. With Fantasy Grounds, you could do it with, I think, the Microsoft Pro or something like that, because it uses Windows. But out of the box, you can only use it with Windows, and it's an application. So that means that with Roll20, like, I could go on Dustin's server, his game, while he's not there, and work on my character or whatever, my journal, write journal entries. Whereas Fantasy Grounds, the one hosting, the GM needs to host the server. He is the server. So unless Gary puts up his server up, you can't join. You can't do anything with it. So that's a big difference. And then you need to be able to connect to it every day on the forums, on Fantasy Grounds forums. You hear people saying, hey, I can't get my players to join. It can't go up. And then people have to go into their modem and routers and configure like an IT specialist to get their Fantasy Grounds to work. And that's been a lot of frustration for a lot of people.
What I do quite like is the simplicity of Roll20, and I should say when I'm saying that I think it's objectively better. I am mucking around to try and wind up Gary, but the point is that I do think that the simplicity of connecting was one of the big reasons we started using it in the 3T RPG podcast. My other podcast, go listen now. We started using it to run our monthly online games for our fans, and part of the reason is because a lot of people that listen to that podcast and a lot of fans that wanted to come and play with us are newbies to online gaming and things like this. And so we thought, let's pick some relatively simple games that are pre-programmed in by people in there, and also it's a relatively simple system to use. You don't need to download any other thing to use for chat. It's all in there, and yeah, it is a bit buggy. Let's call it what it is. Sometimes some people have some troubles, but click a link, you're there, boom, everyone's in. And that's one of the cool things about it. And we played with people who'd never used it before, and it was just like, yeah, relatively easy. And that's one of the big draws. And say what you will about it being worse or whatever, or this or that, the other. One of the biggest draws is it doesn't matter what computer you have. It doesn't matter if you're computer literate even. You could be an absolute mongoloid and you'll be able to use it.
Because it's it's through Google Chrome, right? It's a web-based program. So
yeah, exactly.
One of the things, I don't know, Gary, is it possible, or Gary, Eric, with Roll20, I can promote players to GM status. So as a group, we can have multiple GMs in a single room, so that way we can all share a game, or we can all share space. Can you do that with Fantasy Grounds, or is it just the one person? Yeah,
you can't.
And that's one of the big things, is because what I was doing with my group is we were building it up to have multiple GMs and have a central hub that we could all meet at for our games. And I would have players that really, like you said, go in on their journal, but I promoted them to GM, and they would go in and they would actually work on filling out the bestiary. It's much more of sharing the love, but also sharing the labor. And that's one of the things I really do like about Roll20.
Yeah, you'd have to expand on that, because I'm not sure what you mean. So, I know that you can have basically, when you fire up Roll20, you have a module, right? You create a game. Yours is called Savage Shot. So you do your Savage Shot. However, though, Now, I'm assuming that inside, everybody joins the Savage Shot, and then inside that, you run multiple different adventures.
Yep.
Yeah, so you're using it a little bit differently than I would have, whereas I created Keep on the Borderlands inside of Roll20, and then I just had it as that. That was it. And then I created another adventure the next time I wanted to play and imported my assets into that one. So I didn't use it as a communal area for people to come and join into.
Yeah, like I use mine as like a literal table that a lot of different people, because I have a lot to do, and I have players, they want to connect with the same group of people, and they can just sort of use this one area as a hub. You know, it's great for building a community. I mean, that's kind of what we did with it. If you go in there and check on the folders, one of the things that I did was I started organizing folders of players so that players could keep multiple different characters in their particular folder. And then I have like the bestiary, and then I also have notes, like Gary, how you had to use GIMP to like cut and paste. But yeah, no, I like the fact that people could, like, if you're playing Deadlands, you can have characters from Reloaded, Noir, and Hell on Earth, and they're all in that same room that you can roll out with. And if you get into this situation where you need to call back to that character, or you need to do something with them, they're there. And if you have monsters that are shared over like multiple game settings, you can put that in your bestiary and just pull them out when you need them, you know?
Yeah. Well, one cool thing I found out yesterday when I looked at Dustin's server are the cards, the action deck, and that's if you've ever played Savage Worlds in person or at conventions, you'll know that people bring their custom decks, theme decks, and all that, and that's something I've been trying to do with Fantasy Grounds and ask the devs to make that possible, because as it stands, the action deck on Fantasy Grounds are 13 pixels wide. So that's very small, too small for theming cards or have text on the cards like the mutation deck. But Roll20 does it out of the box. You can import any custom deck you want and they'll work. Now, why the devs on Fantasy Grounds don't think that's important, I don't know, but that's lame.
Yeah. I don't want to lose sight of the question, though, because the question is which one is best, the best virtual tabletop for Savage Worlds.
Yeah, action deck is a big thing with Savage Worlds.
Yeah, it defines turn order. And
inside of Savage Worlds, inside of Fantasy Grounds, you still have a deck of cards. You just can't change the way that it looks. It's just a deck of cards. You probably can, like, if there's different.
Yeah, you can, but they're only 13 pixels wide. So
yeah. So Fantasy Grounds still uses a deck. It still uses a deck for turn order. It still uses a deck for everything else. You just can't change the art. Like, you're stuck with the theme that you get. If that makes sense. It still uses a card deck. Also, Fantasy Grounds, like Eric said, has Savage World stuff material out the yin-yang. So if you use Roll20, like Dustin is saying, so let's say both of them have an equal learning curve.
I don't think they have an equal learning curve, though.
Oh, I don't either. I would say for 100%, without a doubt, Fantasy Grounds is easier, but that's just my opinion. Wow. Not only that, it's more stuff is done for you automatically. So it depends on how invested you want to get into it. If inside of Roll20, you're getting a blank sheet, you get nothing. You have to bring all of your assets into the game. If you buy Fantasy Grounds and Savage Worlds through Fantasy Grounds, you're getting all of that material already. The character sheet is done. Everything is linked up. It comes with tokens. It comes with spell descriptions. It comes with edges and hindrance descriptions. Everything is clickable. Everything is linkable. Everything is done. You don't have to do it. But this is the thing, is for some people, that is a fun thing to do. Like, I did enjoy building the player's handbook and bringing in the pieces and creating the book. The part that I didn't like is that when I brought my players into it, they didn't give a shit that I spent 100 hours building this thing. You know, cool, I can click on this link and it shows what the spell description is. They didn't they didn't care that I spent hours making that happen for them. and that's already pre-built into Fantasy Grounds.
Gary, it kind of sounds like you just said you had fun doing it, but the real problem is your players didn't really seem to appreciate it.
See that I don't know how to explain that.
Well, Gary has more money than time.
Yeah.
I would let me just say that I enjoyed doing it, but my players didn't appreciate the fact that I did it. They didn't realize that I did it. Nobody cared that I did it. It was fun for me to do, but nobody really realizes the work that goes into bringing that kind of stuff in. You yourself are saying that you have multiple GMs coming in and bringing in a bestiary. So if I wanted to play a Beast and Barbarians game and I have the PDF, I could actually literally probably go buy Beast and it's Hellfrost, for example. I don't know if Beast and Barbarians is in there. I can go buy the module. Somebody else has done the work. I pay the $10. I save myself hours, like hundreds of hours of importing stuff.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is it's a matter of preference, and if you're the type of person who wants something to move a lot quicker and already have the work done for you, Fantasy Grounds is your choice. But if you're someone that would like to have more control and more in depth into the theme and feel of it, then Roll20.
You would just put a lot more work into Roll20. For Savage Worlds. Do you know what I mean? Like everything is done inside Fantasy Grounds.
I do know that like playing in Dave Scott's game, like it would, and this was my failure a lot of times, is I would take the dice and I would roll them out on the table, and Dave would just sort of smack his head. It's like, Dustin, you're supposed to drop the dice on your target. Like there would be if you follow Fantasy Grounds as it's supposed to be done, then yes, it runs completely smooth. But you get really excited and you drop it on the wrong token, or you drop it, then you have to like reverse it a little bit.
That's the thing. It's automation. I mean, Roll20 and Fantasy Grounds, you get a lot of automation, but you have to learn how to use it. Once your group learns how to use it, it runs really smooth. But until you do, and there's always this guy or two guys in your group that don't know how to use it, and then it just slows things down. So if you're into automation, these two are pretty good. But let's just talk briefly a little bit about Tabletop Simulator, because Gary and I discovered that a couple years ago. We've been using it a little bit on and off, Gary a bit more than I, but basically Tabletop Simulator it's an environment where you can manipulate 3D objects. So Savage Worlds uses props. You got dice, you got cards, you got tokens, maps, and it can do all that, but it won't do any of the automation that the other ones would do. Any other pros that you feel is good with Tabletop Simulator, Gary?
Well, this is the thing. So again, there's a learning curve to it. It's not that stiff, but it is a completely different thing. All Tabletop Simulator is it's the perfect example of sitting down at a table and playing with your friends, because there is no automation. You just have dice and you have a table. You can import assets like trees and maps and terrain and throw down maps. You can keep it extremely simple and just put a map on the table and just import POG tokens and just push the tokens around. But all you are is a hand inside a virtual world that's just a room with a table in it, and you move your stuff around. There's no mechanics behind the scene. There's no Dungeons and Dragons stuff built into it. There's no Savage World stuff built into it. So it's core free, mechanic free in that sense. It's literally just a table, and that's it. So all you're doing is setting up the scenes. You're just building the maps, and everybody can have their material in front of them. There's cards. You can deal cards, and you can roll dice, and there is Savage Worlds dice inside the game that you can get that will auto ace and accumulate the total. But all of the work is done in your head, like all of the descriptions, all of the monster stuff. Like you don't have to import anything. It's all you're doing. You're spending the majority of your time, which is why I really like it. As opposed to me importing the player's handbook into Roll20, I now spend my time creating cool 3D virtual environments for my players to play on. Cool maps. I've done, anyways, we don't need to get into that, but I build cool 3D maps and I import tokens and stuff like that. And we just move our tokens around like we would if I had like a real simulated adventure map on a table. And then
how much is that?
It's $10. So here's the drawback to Tabletop Simulator. You have to have a relatively, man, if you bought your computer in the last 2 years, it should run Tabletop Simulator no problem, even with like generic cards, because it's not super graphic intensive. It is a 3D environment. It is going to use your video card to play the game. And then you also have to run Discord on top of it. It's not the kind of thing that you can play on a laptop or you can play on a tablet, which is a huge advantage for people that like Roll20. Roll20 works on anything. You just need a web browser. This is a little bit more 3D-ish, but I like it because it brings that third dimension is a better sense of realism without all the mechanic stuff. And here's the thing that I think me and Dustin will both agree on. In fact, I know Eric will too. The biggest problem with playing online role-playing games is the learning curve, and it's the mechanics behind the scene. It's like it's importing the macros, and it's doing all this other stuff to try and get the game to run, then teaching that to the players that come and play your game. There's kind of none of that in Tabletop Simulator. All you have to do is move a hand around and click and grab an item and move it where you want it, and the rest is just done as you explain how it's done. You know, it just becomes descriptive at that point. And it's $10, and you can play not only card games, board games, RPGs. A lot of people have stuff already pre-set up inside of it and whatnot. So, and you can access the outside world through tablets and whatnot. But if you're looking for a light system, or like a no mechanics kind of a deal, basically all you're doing is you're just building the scenes inside of TTS, and that's it. Which is one of the reasons that I prefer it now, because one of the biggest problems we have is trying to teach the other players how to work stuff in game to actually make that, like in Fantasy Grounds. It's like, no, you got to take the dice, you got to drop it on the token, and then everything works cool. But if they don't do that, nothing works right. And you're like, then you're just smacking your head like David Scott.
Yeah. So, before we wrap this up, because we're running out of time here, I will say this, Polish Ogre. I mean, I think it comes down to your GM style. If you're a theater of the mind type of guy that doesn't use maps and minis all that much, I would just avoid virtual tabletops, really. You can do it just with Discord or Skype or whatever you use. We've done it several times with Harrison running games for us here on the Wild Eye, and it worked great. But there are GMs, and I do like my maps and minis too. Then, you're going to have to learn a virtual tabletop, and that's the thing. It's an investment of your time, a learning curve. It's like learning another game on top of another game, basically, to use a virtual tabletop. So if you can avoid it, avoid it. Otherwise, I mean, you've got it's just a lot of work, really.
They can be a headache for sure. Price wise, I looked up. There's look up Taking 20 on YouTube. He's a pretty famous RPG guy. He's got a great video on the price comparisons, and essentially the Fantasy Grounds has so many features that you can really only compare it to the $9.99 version. When you start getting to features. So in the end, Fantasy Grounds will be cheaper, and Fantasy Grounds is already pre-set up with all the books you have to buy them $10 for the core book. But if you're not looking to heavily invest your time in setting up and having that stuff already pre-done for you, I would say go with Fantasy Grounds. Also, too, if you create a module or an adventure inside of Fantasy Grounds, like I did with my Starsky and Hutch stuff, I have 6 episodes ready to go that I can bust out at any time and play. But if you want an easy to use, and Roll20 does have a better mapping system, like Dustin was saying, with the tiered stuff and with the asset imports and stuff, which it's nice that you can do them in game, but it's just as easy to do them with a Google search and figure out how to use GIMP and bring those images in too. But the nice part about Roll20 is that it's online, it's a web-based browser, so that makes access for everybody a little easier. Anyways.
Yeah, I think that sums it up pretty good. Let's wrap this up.
My name's Harrison Hunt, and I do what like right now I ride a mother bike through the animal where I ain't supposed to do that. I'm from the podcast Tabletop Twats, and this is the wrap up, and it's gonna be sick. I'm right now, you can suck my dick, cause I don't give a what you think about my so suck my mother big fucking dick. Yeah! What I'm trying to say is it's the mother wrap up. Just like Mummy used to make.
So, another good episode. I think we've firmly decided that neither are very good. And that,
Right.
and that Skype is the way to go. Or if you want to game with people, just meet up, for God's sake. Right? And if they live on the other side of the planet and they ain't willing to make the commute, then they ain't your friend. Alright? Understood? Now, Dustin, you have something to plug? Let's not make it a GM's hangout. Plug something good.
Why, yes, I would love to plug Atomic Ninja Studios. You can find us on DrivethruRpg. We have 2 products out right now. One is Pay What You Want, and the other one is a little bit more expensive, but if you're playing Powder Mage, you probably want to pick that up. I'm just saying, 21 archetypes. Shameless plug there. Check us out on Patreon. We have SWGM Podcast on Patreon. Look us up on Atomic Ninja Studios. You'll get to see a great website that's under construction, and check us out on Facebook, Atomic Ninja. You'll be able to see some like horrible art that I'm posting, and also like a couple of playlists. And then, and then just check us out on our podcast, SWGM Podcast.
What did I just say? I said not to plug that.
I'm a rebel. I'm a rebel.
Dustin is the only likeable one on that podcast. So contact info, email. You can email us on thewilddie@gmail.com. We're on this Facebook media. We're on the MeWe, the YouTube, the Wild Die Podcast. Just search for us on that name and all of that stuff. And we're on Nerds International Group on MeWe. Come and mingle with us. We're always in there chatting. We're always sharing GIFs. You know, you like a GIF? Hey kids, come along. Yeah, and we're on Twitter, Patreon, all of that stuff. Go on, Gary. What's up?
How does that work for you in real life? You just walk up to random dudes and be like, "Hey, bro, I effed your mom." That was just a joke.
No, because I'm not being that insulting. I'm just saying that their podcast is worse than ours. It's just a bit of friendly banter. It's not worse than ours. It's far better. We know that.
You're just joking, right?
Exactly. I'm just joking. It don't matter. The thing is, in England, if you go up to somebody and insult them, it means that you like them. Usually, if you've known somebody for 2 weeks, you would never, ever, ever insult them, right? But then after 2 weeks, when you get to know somebody, you start taking the piss out of them and say you banged their mum. Then that means I like you. Okay? Do you understand what I'm saying?
It's a cultural difference.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's how it works here. Once you start insulting somebody, that means you're friends. Do you understand? Mm-hmm. So actually, that means I like the Savage Worlds CM podcast.
That get stabbed.
I've never been stabbed, and it's because that's how it's done over here. If I didn't insult people, I'd be stabbed more. They come up to me and be like, "Why haven't you said you banged my mum? I'm gonna stab you."
Don't you like my mum? She's a wonderful woman. Beautiful. Look at her.
I can't wait for the time that you cross Jared Gunning at a convention somewhere in America, and he beats the crap out of you and then looks at you square in the eyes and says, "Oh, I was just joking."
Okay, well, let's put it this way. How about we settle this with a good old-fashioned fisticuffs? Jared Gunning, I'm calling you out for a fight. Red Hill.
Okay, Harrison, he's effectively Irish. He will come and fight you.
I know, but then the thing is, then this can all be over. You know what I mean? And Jared will probably win, but I just want to put an end to this. So Jared, we'll meet behind the car park of Argos in Red Hill, 7 p.m. tomorrow night, and I will see you there. And with that, I would like to thank the following patrons for donating to this podcast.
Sean, Richard, Uncle J Raz, Perry Chalmers, Alan Bray, Conrad Erasmus, Norbert, Greg Bruni, Corey Judd, Murder Hobo Show, Ray Aristia, Rob Tao, Bubbles Manuel Sams, Matt Stark, Pure Mongrel, Stephen Dragonspawn, Sophia, Daryl Cartier, Frank Turfer Jr., yeah, Gil Dashon, Lewin Strad, James Schoenheim, John Peterson, Carl Kiesler, Mr. Stag, Remy Belladot, Digital Dungeon Master, Emmanuel Pabst, Sid the Squid, Dan Brown, Michael Morrison, New Guy Cool. Thanks for the donations.
Yeah, we got a new patron there, Michael Morrison. I have a supermarket near me called Morrison's. Do you think he owns it?
Yes.
I hope so.
Yes, he's furious that you're not meeting in his parking lot so he can get autographs.
Oh, this is a fun episode.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on the show, Dustin.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me on, guys.
It was great to have you, man. And I learned some good advice today. I'm going to start using Roll20 more. It's
a lot of fun. Yeah. Yeah, I love it. Especially if you do theater of the mind. You can really do a lot of it if you just don't want to, you know.
And I actually do, so I think this is going to be very handy. So thanks for the advice. All right.
Be sure to invite me to your welfare game. Never, Harrison.
Welfare game. All right. So, I hope you enjoyed the show, that you learned something about the virtual tabletops for Savage Worlds. There's a lot we could have covered, but only have limited time. So, this is Eric saying, grab your sword by the balls.
And this is Harrison saying, sorry. I'm so sorry. Jared, don't actually fight me. Look, I'm sorry. Please. Please. I say not what I mean.
You're good at begging for your life.
I've had to do a lot of it, man. I've had to do a lot of it. Trust me.
Oh, it's awesome, man. This is Gary saying, keep your pants on, keep it fun. Jared, kick Harrison's ass. Thanks, everybody. We're out.
Thank you, Gary.
The Wild Die Podcast is not affiliated with or endorsed by Pinnacle Entertainment Group or official Pinnacle licensees. Any of the products mentioned on our show or appear on our website are the property and copyright of the respected owners. All music and artwork is used with permission of Pinnacle Entertainment Group. All items are used under fair use and educational and review purposes. All other items are the intellectual property of the Wild Die Podcast.
An absolute mongoloid.